And welcome back to the Cooler Jets podcast. We host Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Michael, what an electric way to end the preseason. The Jets are now 3-0 in this preseason. It wasn't always perfect, but luckily they had a guy by the name of Chris Streveler that could always bring in off the bench to save the day. And I have to say, Michael, this is the first time I've seen the Jets win in person. I know it's preseason, but going to the game, the last two games I've been to, they got curb stomped by the Patriots. So this is a pretty great experience for me. And anytime you see a game-winning touchdown, it's great. So we have a lot to talk about today. The roster cutdowns are tomorrow on Tuesday. So we'll give a brief 53-man roster prediction. We got the dress rehearsals. We got to talk about the starters. And then, in my opinion, maybe the most interesting topic today is the Chris Streveler versus Mike White debate for QB3. So let's just hop right into it. Michael, starting offense. Some people criticize it a little bit. I mean, it's fair. The Jets had 2 turnovers, a punt, and a field goal. So maybe the end results weren't that great. But in my opinion, I felt like the categorization of the Jets, starting offense being like extremely alarming or something was kind of hyperbolic. I mean, they were moving the football. I've seen too many Jets offenses struggle to get a single yard for me to really hate on this that much. I felt like the Jets were moving the ball and were on their way to scoring. Just what were your thoughts on the Jets starting offensive performance?
Oh, I agree 100%. I think, it's definitely fair to come out of this and think, were the results a little bit disappointing relative to what you might expect, against the Giants backups defense? Sure, absolutely. And then, if it were a regular season game and you have 4 drives and you get 3 points, 2 turnovers, and a punt, then yeah, for sure, those aren't good results. But just looking at the process of how the Jets offense was going about things, it looked pretty good for the most part. I mean, they weren't going 3 and out. They're gaining yards. They're getting first downs. They're moving the ball pretty well. They just had a few big plays that didn't really go their way. Big mistakes that they made. Carter had a fumble. Flacco threw a terrible interception. And then they didn't convert on that third down on the field goal drive. So they didn't make those big plays that they needed to, but the yards were there, the first downs were there. Altogether, they had 6 first downs across these few drives. We've seen the Jets struggle to get 6 first downs in an entire half before, let alone just 4 drives. So yeah, I think you could have expected more. There are some concerns to take away from it. I think Flacco's performance was not terrible, but the downfield accuracy was a little shaky. The interception wasn't good. He made some good decisions underneath, but some questions with his performance. Run blocking wasn't great, but the skill position weapons, I think, were fantastic. The way the ball was spread around, the separation, the plays after the catch, and then Carter and Hall's ability to turn poorly blocked plays into successful runs. All of that was really good. And then play calling, I also think, was effective. LaFleur was really effective at the bootleg game, just creating options for Flacco that were easy to take advantage of. So overall, I think there was a lot of good with the starting offense. The results weren't there because a couple of costly mistakes, but the overall process that I think you saw from them was encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd like to see the starting offensive line create a little bit more space in the run game. And granted, this is the first time they've played together in a game. But like you said, I think Carter and Hall did a good job of making something out of nothing on a few plays. The pass blocking has been great between the starters and the backups in the offensive line. They haven't allowed a single sack in any of the preseason games, so that's encouraging. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I think there are positives and certainly some negatives. I mean, Flacco is Flacco. I mean, I think, that interception, if he just lofts it over Carter, that's a big gain for Carter. Instead, he tries to drill it right to him, and it's thrown right to the linebacker. And I think that's one of those plays where if that's Wilson, I do believe that that's a gain for the Jets. And that's kind of the give or take, is Wilson's going to give you more of those improv plays, whereas Flacco is a lot safer at maybe some of those underneath stuff, like you said, those quick decisions where we've seen Wilson struggle at times. But overall, yeah, I mean, yeah, you would like the results to be better, especially against a backup Giants defense, but it wasn't like the Jets got manhandled or they were stifled, or it was just kind of like, all right, they moved the ball, they had a few negative plays, but overall, I think you have to be okay with the performance. And certainly, like you said, like in preseason, you're just trying to see the process of this offense. You're trying to see these weapons create space. You're trying to see the blocking. You're trying to see if this Jets offense has an identity. And I think you kind of saw that. They were moving the ball. They had their success. And I have no doubt that if they played a full game, that this Jets offense was going to continue to move the ball and get points. Case in point, the offense came right in against the same backup defense with the same play caller and scored 2 touchdowns. So it's not like it was the Jets starters got trounced by the Jets or the Giants starting defense, and then the backups came in, the Jets scored. It's the same backup Giants defense, and then the Jets backups came in and still did it. So, it is what it is. I would like to see Garrett Wilson get a little bit more run with the starters. It seems pretty clear that it's Davis and Moore with Berrios as the starting slot receiver, but Wilson certainly brings maybe a different element. I think Corey Davis, to me, it seems like he's had a pretty underrated training camp. He had another good week this week, and so he's earned that spot for sure. But like you said, it's just great to see how many weapons the Jets have. Tyler Conklin just continues to be a major factor. And the thing to me, and this maybe isn't, definitely isn't a point that's specific to the Jets starting offense, but the Becton injury is a real bummer. The Zach Wilson injury was really scary, but honestly, the Jets got fairly lucky with the eventual diagnosis. But the Jets have made it out of this preseason pretty healthy. I mean, compared to years past. And I think you have to be really happy with that when you talk about this preseason. I mean, every game this Jets team got better. They made it out relatively healthy. They've had some of these fourth quarter comebacks. So, all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. The starting defense, I don't think you have to make any caveats for. They looked terrific today. They had the interception, had that big sack. The defensive line looked great. You got to see Carl Lawson for the first time since the last Giants preseason game where he only played like 3 snaps, and he looked great. What did you think of the Giants defense or the Jets defense rather? I thought they looked about as good as you could hope. I know it was the Giants backup offense, but still they certainly showed that's definitely the Giants backup offense, the way they dominated them.
Oh yeah. Like you said, just watching this, you could see the pure dominance. And I guess it's fair to expect maybe the same thing of the offense, because what the defense did is exactly the type of overpowering performance that you hope to see when you get first stringers against second stringers. It was overwhelming the way the pass rush looked against that Giants backup offensive line. And I was fixating on Carl Lawson. I know you were as well, and I'm sure a lot of Jets fans were. Because this was our first extended look at him in his Jets career. I know he played 3 snaps against the Giants last year, and that's all we've gotten out of him. But now you got to focus on him a little bit for multiple series, and he was consistently getting off the ball really well, creating plenty of pocket cave-in with his bull rush. He had one sack opportunity that he kind of missed on, but it was sort of a read option kind of play. He had to respect the run, but he was living on the backfield. Quinnen was great. And then throughout the game, there were other players with the second and third string who were also good. But specifically that first string unit, Lawson also had a big run stuff. It was a great performance. Carter
can't forget Michael Carter. There you go.
Yeah, he had a short tackle for a minimal gain. Then he had the interception. He got in on that sack. Sauce Gardner had another silent performance. And I think you could see the impact that sort of coming into play, with that Carter interception. That's where having a cornerback like Sauce Gardner can be so helpful, because if the quarterback is just going to deliberately avoid that side so consistently, it really opens things up for the other side of the defense. It kind of helps them, helps make their jobs a little bit easier. So first team defense came in and pretty much flawless performance, which is exactly what you wanted to see.
Yeah, to me, the thing that stood out in this game from the starters onward is just how much more talent the Jets have on the field. I mean, you were looking at some of the starters from last year and some of the guys that were playing in last year's preseason games, and it's just night and day how much more talented this Jets football team is, and certainly how much deeper they are. There's a lot of guys in this field that the Jets will be forced to cut, have to make a tough decision, and guys who will get claimed elsewhere, which has been a rare occurrence the last decade of watching Jets football. So that's great. I mean, obviously the starter level players of the Jets certainly have question marks and things to prove, but there are good question marks and things to believe in. But the depth of this team is pretty unquestionable at most positions, I would say. When you look at the depth of this team and you get to the guys past the starters, because like you said, the starting defense is great. Starting offense, I would rate as good, had their moments, moved the ball, but obviously couldn't come through and with some big plays. But the depth, I mean, that's what all these preseason games really are, is the second and third stringers battling it out for the bragging rights for the year. Who's the big brother? Who's the little brother in this meaningless football game? But there's one guy in particular we have to shout out, Denzel Mims, who decided to save perhaps his best for last. Request to trade on Tuesday. The Jets say, all right, here you go. You're going to play. You're either going to up your trade value or you're going to make us want to keep you, or who knows what would happen. But Denzel Mims certainly showed out. No matter who was at quarterback, he made a ton of plays once he entered this game. So from the backups, who stood out to you? I mean, what were some of your takeaways from watching these backups play? We're going to get into the quarterbacks, Mike White versus Streveler, but ignoring White versus Streveler, who were some of the backups that really stood out to you and maybe solidified their chances at making the roster, or maybe even the practice squad?
Yeah, well, look, I think we have to start with Denzel Mims. I mean, it's just wild that he waited this long to pull this out, to have he basically equaled his production from last season in this one game. He came very close to doing that. So
that's insane.
This game was kind of what you hoped Denzel Mims would be. And obviously, not the best competition, but this just the type of plays he was making, tough catches over the middle. Really the majority of his catches were like dig routes over the middle. And then obviously he had the go route later on. Well, actually it wasn't really a go route. He's in the slot. It kind of was like a, out and up little
wheel
sort of route. Yeah. Slot wheel sort of thing. But yeah, this is who you thought he was going to be. And I do think you should be a little bit cautious about buying into this performance, just because, it is such an outlier at this point. He has a full season of bad tape from last year and 2 games this year where he struggled. But at the same time, I think the timing is good for the Jets.
Can you say he struggled? I don't know if he struggled in the 2 preseason games.
The first 2. Well, he did have the penalty and the drop.
Yeah, but in that game, he had made
first game.
He certainly had tough plays in the first, like some bad plays. But again, it's not like he. I don't know. Maybe our definition of struggling is different after watching how some terrible football the last few years. But like he still made some plays in the other 2 games. I don't know. He didn't stand out, but it's not like he like.
He makes too many mistakes for a wide receiver.
And I will say he does have some of the worst body language I've ever seen from a receiver.
True.
Just the way he like saunters back to the huddle and kind of always looks like he's limping a little bit. And I don't know. I agree with you though that
the timing is good. I think the timing is good. The fact that the Jets are probably going to be exploring, looking to trade for him. I don't think it's guaranteed that they'll trade him, but they'll definitely look into it considering the request.
What do you think they could get for him?
I think I was feeling like a 6th is probably.
I think they
are
could
you
get more.
Shooting a little bit higher?
Maybe this is completely recency bias. I think they could get they got a 4th for Chris Herndon, which maybe is a complete outlier, but I think they could get a 4th for Denzel Mims. Hell, if enough teams are interested, maybe they push it to a conditional 3 or a late 3. You never know. Joe Douglas has worked some magic.
Know. I mean, the draft pedigree is there, but the production from last season.
All right, let's just think about this. He's got a 6th for Jordan Willis. He got a 4th for Chris Herndon. What are some of the other ones? I mean, Joe Douglas has a track record of getting significantly more than you would expect.
That's true.
And the type of game that Denzel Mims just had, there are plenty of teams around the league who are looking for receiver. The Jets have been, I imagine this is probably trying to up the trade value, but they've been pretty much like Denzel Mims is a part of this team. Like I'm sure the Jets are going to explore it, but it's not like a guarantee that the Jets are just going to dump him. Doesn't seem like Denzel has a huge issue with the team or the coaching staff. It's more just like he wants to play. So, and I will say for a 6th, I'm keeping Denzel Mims. And I know you're like, well, maybe we shouldn't buy into this performance, but it'll happen. It happens every single year where the Jets in December or November have a game where they're trotting out their 4th, 5th, and 6th string receivers. And I don't know. He'll play even if he's wide receiver number 6, he'll have opportunities this year. I don't know. I think if they can get a 4th, push for a 3, they'll do it. But I don't think they trade him for anything less than that. Is that recency bias? I mean, he is a 2nd overall pick. We liked his rookie year. I don't know. I just feel like a 6 is
I agree with you that they probably wouldn't do it for that price. But I just think for me, that's probably I'm just trying to be more realistic.
Dude, the Bears, the Cowboys. There are plenty of teams that could use a receiver. I don't know. I feel like the Jets can get a little bit more.
I just feel like by this point, like it's his third year in the league. He was already kind of an older rookie. I think at this point,
that
the
doesn't matter.
draft pedigree is out the window at this point, and it's just the
it's not
production.
Out the window. It's not out the window.
Not completely, but I think it is more like we have to be honest about this guy. He was awful last year. He was maybe the worst receiver in the league. So I just don't think.
Okay, don't get hyperbole. He's not maybe the worst. He wasn't good.
Let's talk about his numbers. 11 games, 8 catches on 23 targets.
But he didn't really play. It's not like he was out there every single snap.
Yes, he did. In terms of his production, per target and per route, he was maybe the worst in the league.
Here's my thinking with Denzel Mims. Second round pick 2 years ago. Plenty of GMs who liked Denzel Mims are still GMing teams. I think that his rookie year was promising. He missed all of training camp in the first 7 games of the year. And he came in and, like you said, Michael, go back to this point a year and a half ago, we were high on Denzel Mims. It wasn't like he came out of the gates and he had plenty of great games his rookie year. Then he gets food poisoning and he drops 20 pounds. It's a new system. He misses all OTAs.
Let me ask you this, though. Does the food poisoning affect him knowing where to line up on the line of scrimmage?
Yes, because he didn't get the reps.
That affects him knowing how to line up on the line of scrimmage.
It's not a clean excuse, but he certainly didn't get any reps in the OTAs and minicamps.
False starts, the drops, that has to do with food poisoning.
Hold on. Hey, Michael, we're trying to sell him to other teams here. No.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. But no. Look, Mims has his issue. I'm not trying to act like Denzel Mims is a top receiver in the league or something, but you're acting like he is Devin Smith level. And it's like, this guy has made plays in the NFL. And last year, he was bad. To say he was one of the worst receivers in the league, I mean, I'd have to go and find some of these guys, but I've seen plenty of worse receivers play for the Jets. The coaching staff didn't feel like he was a great fit in the offense. Clearly. It's a hard system to learn. It's a system that requires a lot of nuance. And Denzel Mims was drafted because of his physical ability. He was not a very refined route runner coming out of Baylor. And I think that, the food poisoning, missing all OTAs and minicamp, and I don't know. I just feel like you can kind of buy into the fact that if he changes scenery, you could get something out of him. So I feel like there will be a team that'll offer a 4th for him. If they trade him, I think they at least get a 4th. I think a 5th and a 6th is way too low. And if that's all the Jets get, I don't think they trade him. I don't think you rush to trade him because, like you saw today and like you said, weak competition, whatever, you still got to see, okay, this is what Denzel Mims could look like in this offense. And that was big to me because we saw him in the Adam Gase offense where he got to run a lot more linear vertical routes and he didn't have to there wasn't as much nuance in terms of where he's lining up and how he's coming in motion and does he have to learn multiple positions. We got to see what does Denzel Mims look like in this offense. And I know it was against backups, but you saw him in those dig routes. You saw him go up and get that touchdown in the corner of the end zone, or at the pylon, rather. I don't know. For me, I think there are plenty of GMs watching this 1 p.m. Sunday game, which, by the way, great for a preseason. I hope the Jets get one of those again next year because that was awesome. Plenty of GMs watch that saying, you know what? I'll give up a 4th-round pick for Denzel Mims. I don't know. Maybe it's recency bias.
I hope they do because I don't have any faith, to be honest. So I would take that in a heartbeat.
We'll see. Here's what I think, though. I do think there's a chance he just makes the roster initially, and then he doesn't get traded until before week 1. I don't think the Jets rush to trade him, and so they have 48 hours to do a trade. I don't know. I don't know. And coming off this type of performance, Michael, I don't know. We'll see. I think you're shooting a little low on him, and I think that his physical ability, his ability to go up and get those tough catches, and his straight line speed, coupled with his athleticism and his height and his size. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like there's a team out there who will buy into that.
Let's hope they do.
Let's hope they do. Okay. Outside of Mims, we've talked about the Denzel Mims show. Okay. Last thing though. Do you think he's traded? Gun to your head.
Yes. I do.
Before week 1. And what do you think it is?
I'll go in between us and say a 5th.
I still think that's low. Okay. I say he gets traded, and I think it's – I so want to be bold and say a 3rd, but I'll go with a 4th.
That's not going to happen. That is, a 3rd-round pick is so high for a guy who has done nothing.
Would you have said Chris Herndon? Would you have said Chris Herndon?
Okay.
Would you have said Chris Herndon would get a 4th?
I know that Douglas has made a lot of great trades, but I just don't think that's going to happen with
I don't think it will. I'm just saying, never know with the bidding war with Joe Doug. All right, maybe I'm being a little. I say he gets traded for a fourth. But if they anything less than that, I don't think they trade him. All right, well, we'll see. All right, outside of Mims, other backups. We'll get to Streveler versus White in a second. Other backups that either stood out to you in a good way or a bad way.
I think Jamie Sherwood made some plays. I think he had a nice game.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if Quan Alexander counts as a backup right now.
Yeah.
I guess he does because he didn't play. He was playing with the second string, but he had a huge hit to force the fumble and made some good plays other than that as well. Yeah, I think those two guys stood out in terms of a bad way. Ashton Davis definitely comes to mind first. 3 years in, just still doesn't know how to wrap up or take good angles. I think he might have played his way off the team, which would have been a hard thing to do, because he's a third round pick in his third season. He should have an easy track onto the roster.
And in theory would be a good scheme fit. A guy who can play both positions and is athletic and
yeah, exactly. But he just hasn't really done anything to warrant sticking around. So at this point, I would kind of be surprised if he made the team. Yeah. Zonovan Knight had a big run. He really showed some speed on. Other than that, I think O-line just collectively deserves some credit for its pass protection, both in this game and throughout the preseason. So those were some of the ones that stood out for me.
Yeah, Nate Herbig was a hell of a pickup by Joe Douglas, and I bet you will be thanking our lucky stars for him at some point this season because injuries will happen. And Herbig has been every time I watch him, he seems to be winning his matchups. Will Park's kind of the inverse of Ashton Davis. I think has played his way onto this team, and he's a guy who's been, I have to say, he's been so positive and upbeat on Twitter this entire offseason. It just seems like he's a guy who's really bought into Robert Saleh. You hear the way that he tweets and talks about him, and sometimes the guy on Twitter doesn't necessarily translate to the guy on the field, but you can see that Will Parks has been showing up and he's been putting in the work, and that's awesome to see.
Yeah.
Calvin Jackson, I mean, hell of a punt return, 2-game winners this preseason. I think that if they decide to keep 6 receivers and they get rid of Mims, he'll make it, but I think he's also a guy you could probably cut and that will find a way into the practice squad. Because personally, and we'll get to our 53s in a minute, but I think personally they go with 5 and they cut him and try to sneak him on the practice squad. Another guy who I think goes to the practice squad is Lawrence Cager, the tight end. That's a tough one for me because he's enticing to me. And he is a guy I could potentially see getting claimed if there's a team that doesn't have that many options at tight end and really wants to buy into him because he is enticing. His athleticism and his speed and his ability as a receiving tight end, his blocking still needs some work, and he did drop that. Granted, it was a bullet by Mike White, but he did drop a ball over the middle, which would have been a first down. Yeah, I don't know. Those were some of the guys that stood out to me. On the defensive line, the backup defensive line, I thought Clemens again. I mean, he's been showing up every single game that we almost forget to talk about him. But how about that hit he put on Tyrod Taylor?
Yeah.
I mean, he looks so terrifying out there. 72 fits him. I like that number on him. Just Clemens just is a guy. I mean, he's a perfect epitome of all gas, no break. I also thought Jermaine Johnson made some plays too, who's had, maybe been outplayed a little bit by Clemens, who's older than him and maybe more pro ready. But I think Johnson had plenty of wins. He had 1 win on the pass interference. You pointed that out to me, which was fantastic, about as good as it gets. It was, it ended up being a pass interference and the Giants got the ball at the 1. But if you go back and watch that play, Jermaine Johnson absolutely toasts his matchup. And on the big hit that Clemens laid on Tyrod Taylor, that was another win by Jermaine Johnson. I don't think you saw as many like the Bradley Anays and Tanzel Smarts and Jonathan Marshalls. I don't know if they made as many plays. Smart to me had some good ones. He could have dove in that fumble. He tried to pick it up. That's a mistake. Anay did have a big pressure and he forced he knocked the ball out of Davis Webb's hands. I don't remember seeing Jonathan Marshall do much. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the guys that stood out, I guess. Okay. Last thing before the 53-man roster predictions, and this will segue us right into it. The Chris Streveler versus Mike White QB battle, probably the most interesting part of this game to me. Going into the game and leaving the game, I thought both guys played well. Like you said, Mike White certainly had his best performance of the preseason, but there it is. Chris Streveler again upstaging him. Again, 3rd time this preseason he's gone in after Mike White has had the Jets at a deficit. He's come in and he's won the game. You have to be, I mean, you see the way this team rides around Streveler. You watch that locker room speech, and yeah, I mean, you watch the celebration, how hyped up Streveler is after that touchdown. And it's hard for me to say that the Jets should keep Mike White, who, yes, had that performance against the Bengals, but is Mike White really that special? No, not to
let's
say
just
that.
Answer it honestly. No.
And look, like, yes, maybe his ceiling is a guy who can come in as a backup quarterback and can complete the easy throws and can maybe keep the offense stable. And he had that great Bengals game and a good start to the Colts game, but you can't forget the Bills game, which he didn't look that good in. You can't forget the 2 preseason games, this game, which he looked pretty bad in. This game he looked good in, but again, Streveler coming in and just making plays. He certainly adds the athletic element. I think he's maybe a more natural backup for Zach Wilson. He's a guy that I think if you did cut, other teams might be interested. I mean, some other team might be interested in Mike White, but Streveler to me just has something about him that I don't really want to let go. Okay, what were your thoughts on both guys' performances? I thought they both played well. Obviously, Streveler outstaged him at the end there, but I mean, what did you think?
Yeah, I think, like you said, to Mike White's credit, this was his best game of the preseason and first good game of the preseason, I think. He definitely came in and did an okay job. I think you look at his stats, they oversell him a little bit. 13 for 17, 170, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I think it oversells him a little bit because he did, get the 20-yard screen touchdown with Barrios. He had a tipped pass that luckily Wilson caught for 15 yards or something like that. So he had a few lucky breaks, but overall he had some nice completions over the middle into tight windows. This was his sharpest performance, but just as you said, yet again, Chris Streveler finds a way to come in and just completely overshadow everything Mike White did. He just has that it factor about him as much as you can in a, fourth quarter of preseason games. He's just got that energy and that moxie, to use that quarterback buzzword. He just comes in and the energy changes, his ability to, turn pressure and potential sacks, just scramble, keep the offense moving and his accuracy has been really good.
Yeah. I was going to say it's not. Yeah. Sorry, keep going.
Really all parts of the field. He's been throwing the ball well. Before this game, we didn't see a ton in terms of the deep ball, but that pass he threw to Mims on that touchdown is as good as you can throw that pass. So, he's just been very effective in pretty much all aspects. I think you could see why he's not, a starting quarterback, because he is quick to scramble. And I don't think he'll ever be a quarterback who's going to grasp the whole playbook and be able to execute.
I don't know if you, can you say that?
All right, come on. He was in the CFL. Let's not get to it.
All right, but hey, so is Kurt Warner was playing Arena League football. I mean, you can't say for sure. I see what you mean,
okay.
Though. Okay, I'm just saying.
Let's calm down.
I'm not saying he's Kurt Warner. I'm just saying you can't say for sure he'll never be that guy. I mean, he went through his reads in this game. It wasn't like every single play was a one read run.
He never makes his reads, but I'm just saying, like,
but did he not?
See why he's a
fourth string
quarterback.
Absolutely. I'm not saying this guy should push for a starting job right away. I'm just saying he ran the offense better than Mike White did. And go back to that Falcons game.
I totally agree. I'm just, mentioning why he's, not
exactly
a superstar or anything. But
I guess
compared to Mike White battling for QB3, like, he clearly brings significantly more tools to the table that you can work with, especially in this offense.
I guess all I would say is I think that, yes, all the improv is exciting and the stuff that he can do athletically is exciting, but he definitely made plays within the structure of the offense and made reads and found guys over the middle. And, like, it wasn't entirely just, okay, this guy's just playing backyard football. Certainly there's an element of that. Certainly it might look different if it was a starting game and he's going up against Bill Belichick or something like that. But, he made plays within the structure of the offense to the point where I really would keep him over Mike White. And to me, it's not close. And the one thing I'll give, the one caveat I'll give, and I say this every year, is as fans, the luxury that the GM and the coaches have is they're with these guys every single day. They're with them in every single meeting. They've seen every single practice. They've seen them since OTAs. They have a better understanding of where these guys are and their grasp of the offense. So it'll be hard for me to criticize really any of these cuts. But from what we've seen on game day 3 game days to be exact, it's pretty clear that Streveler has the edge over Mike White. And look, the team got hyped for Mike White when he beat the Bengals. I'm not going to act like the team like hates Mike White or something. I think they would love whoever wins in the game. But you watch how this team has rallied around Chris Streveler 3 straight weeks. It's pretty special. So for me, I mean, look, this all might end up being a moot point because, okay, that's a battle between Mike White or Streveler. But then as soon as Zach Wilson's back, I think one of them's getting cut and placed on the practice squad anyway. But for me, for my money, I'm keeping Chris Streveler. And I think that lends us right into the 53-man roster prediction. Well, let me get your I know you can open up with the 53-man roster prediction, but I on yours, little spoiler, you do have the Jets keeping White, but that's more of what you think the Jets will do, which is probably, I would say that if I was a betting man, I'd probably bet on White. Although there is a part of me that thinks that Saleh and Douglas have the awareness to know that, hey, this guy's a bit of a dog. Let's keep him in the building. But you think the Jets will keep White? What would you do? GM Michael Nania, based off these 3 preseason games, and keep in mind, Streveler was a guy who wasn't getting any team reps before that Eagles game. So this is a guy who's had very limited team reps, and he's done this 3 straight weeks. He's come back. Who are you keeping?
Well, I totally agree with you. If I were in charge, it would be Streveler, and it would be a no-brainer decision. And I think the main reason for that is not just the fact that he's outplayed White this preseason, but it's also the fact that in order for White to be, for his position to be taken based on 3 preseason games, he has to come into this preseason not having the best resume. And that's the fact with Mike White. I think he doesn't really deserve to not have his job taken based on preseason games because he hasn't really done anything in the league. He has 1 good game. Even you look at his preseason production, pretty much every single preseason game he's played, and he's played a lot of them with both the Cowboys and the Jets. Pretty much every single time he hasn't been that productive. Last year, Zach Wilson was blowing him out of the water in the preseason. Nobody was impressed with what he was doing. And then every other regular season game he played wasn't that good, except maybe a quarter against the Colts. Even that wasn't all that great. He had a dropped interception in that game. So that's just the bottom line. I think White is a guy who hasn't really proven enough to where his spot should just be guaranteed to be safe. So if Streveler comes in and outplays him for 3 straight games and generally by a pretty significant margin, then I think it's definitely he deserves to take that spot based on his performance. But I do think, and to get into our 53 predictions, I am going to lean towards that they keep him just because, he has a whole year in the system from last season into this year, plus the practice reps that Streveler didn't even get until a few weeks ago. I think they're going to lean towards White just because of that fact. And just in general with these
That's dumb predictions. Yeah, played him with less reps.
Listen,
that's dumb.
NFL teams do dumb stuff. They do dumb stuff. We kind of know that by this point.
I'll totally overreact if they cut him.
I mean, just looking at roster predictions, doing it for the Jets the past few years, like I think I've kind of found that generally when you're debating between, the more favored player in terms of pedigree, depth chart position versus, the fan favorite who produces more, who you want to see, who might have more upside, be more exciting. Usually I think at least the pedigree guy who gets it, who is in higher favor with the team. So I'm going to lean towards that with White versus Streveler. But if it were up to me, it would be a no-brainer for Streveler. But I'm going to lean towards White with my prediction.
Okay, so your quarterbacks are Wilson, Flacco, and White. Yeah. Mine are Wilson, Flacco, and Streveler. I'm buying into it. I think that you're right. It's a real toss-up for me, but I'm going to go with Streveler. I'm going with my heart here, maybe not my brain. I really hope they keep him. But as I said, it might all be a moot point. Like as soon as Wilson comes back, one of these guys is probably getting cut.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Unless Flacco goes down week 1 or that Wilson doesn't come back until a few weeks later and he goes down, this will probably all not matter. But I'll keep Streveler for now. At running back, I think we're the same. Keeping 3, Carter, Hall, and Coleman, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
So that means cutting Ty Johnson, P. Ryan, and Zonovan Knight. I think Knight is certainly a guy you're going to put on the practice squad. I think you can keep – I think you get like a few veteran spots. Like, what is it, 5 veteran spots of the 16 practice squad? I forget exactly how many it is. But But, I think P. Reiner Johnson, one of those guys, might end up on the practice squad as well. At receiver, I'm only keeping 5. How many are you keeping?
I have 6 for the receivers.
So I imagine that your 6 include my 5, which are Moore Davis, Barrios Wilson, and Jeff Smith.
Yes.
Right. And then the 6th one is, drum roll, please.
I have Calvin Jackson
at
number 6. I think Mims is going to get traded, and I think Jackson sneaks on into that last spot.
Yeah, I think it's hard because I really do question if they could trade Mims before Tuesday. We'll see. But I think Mims gets traded, and I think Jackson's a guy you can put on the practice squad. And there's a lot of tough cuts and decisions to make. This is an offense that doesn't. I mean, they ran a lot of 10 personnel last year, but to open up the season, I think 5 receivers is enough. The 6 guys.
I mean, actually, now that you bring it up, I think in terms of initial 53, like 2 days from now, probably Mims will still be on it. Now that I think about it, I think
it's possible they get a trade done. It's possible they get a trade done on Monday or Tuesday.
Maybe after that deadline, put Jackson in the practice squad, maybe trade Mims, then bring him up once he gets traded. So this might be more my prediction for once the season comes around, more so than the initial 53, but it could happen.
All right, then a tight end, I have Conklin, Uzama, Ruckert, and then I kept Wesco. Bodden's been injured. I really did like Bodden more than Wesco. I think they can probably slip him onto the practice squad, though. I wanted to go Cage over Wesco, but the special teams factor and then Bodden being injured and Wesco being able to give you fullback versatility, although Rucker could, in theory, do that as well. I'll keep Wesco. So do you have the same 4 tight ends? You go 3. What's your tight end situation looking like?
I have the same 4 tight ends. Yeah, I think Bodden definitely had a chance with the injury. I think just without getting a chance to evaluate him at all, I think it's kind of hard to keep him based on that because he played very little last year. So I think it's kind of hard to justify a roster spot without really watching him play. So I think Wesco has, the tight end fullback versatility. They want blocking in their tight end. So I think it's going to be him as that 4th tight end.
Yeah. And I think Cager and Yaboa are certainly practice squad candidates. And the other thing to remember with this too is even the initial 53 probably won't be the 53 before week 1 because other guys will get cut around the league and the Jets might cut some guys. Looking at the backup offensive line, which we're about to get to next, looking at you, Chuma Doga, because I have the starting 5, Dwayne Brown, Tomlinson, McGovern, AVT Fant, and then the 4 reserves I have them keeping 9, are Max Mitchell, who's a lock, Dan Feeney, and Nate Herbig, who seemingly locks, and then Chuma Doga. I think this is probably the same. I think this is pretty much a lock initially, but keep an eye on this position in terms of a one around the league that if another backup offensive tackle shakes free, I could see them dropping a Doga and trying to add him. I assume we have the same 9 offensive linemen?
Yeah, I have the same offensive line. And I agree, too. I think this is a position where maybe the most likely position for, picking up someone who gets cut from another team.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that has me at 24 guys on offense. I think you kept one more, so you're at 25. Defensively, when you look at the edge, I have them. Now, this is where it gets really hard. The Jets' defensive line is fantastic. The guys they cut here will get claimed elsewhere. I have Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Michael Clemens, Jacob Martin, who are all locks. Bryce Huff is probably a lock as well. That's 6. And then I have him keeping 7. And I went with Bradley Anae over Vinny Curry and Jabari Zuniga, which was a really tough one. I went back and forth. My thinking is Vinny Curry's been out with a hamstring for about a month now. I think they might be able to place him on the PUP list. They might be able to cut him and bring him back. I think he's a guy that, similar to, what was his name last year? Why am I forgetting? The Ronnie Blair, who I think didn't make the initial 53 and then was kind of brought back one of the weeks. I think that'll be Vinny Curry this year. He'll probably get cut. I think he does have something like $800K guaranteed, though, so I wonder how that works out. But they could put him on the PUP list. They could bring him back. I think this is the last we'll see of Vinny Curry. But for now, I think it's either Anae or Zuniga, and I think Anae gets the nod. It's close, though, because Zuniga is a Joe Douglas draft pick. He did have that really good week 1 game. The last thing to consider before I hear yours is when you look at defensive ends, Huff, Martin, Anae, and Lawson are all kind of maybe on the smaller side. Lawson does play with a lot of power. So maybe they try to go for a bigger guy. My reasoning is that JFM gives you that inside versatility. They can carry a lot of defensive tackles. Maybe keeping a smaller guy makes more sense. And Naya has looked really good. He had a great week of practice, had a great game yesterday, and he had another pressure today. So, Michael, what does your edge look like? I think you have JFM listed as a defensive tackle, but and I think of him more as a defensive tackle as well. But for simplicity's sake, let's say he's in your edge group. What is your edge group looking like?
Yeah, so I guess if you throw JFM in there, Lawson, Johnson, Huff, Martin, Clemens. I think those are your locks. And I do have Curry in this group, but he's definitely the biggest, probably of all the players when you're making, these 53 prediction, he's one of the most crucial players in terms of, do I keep him on or do I keep him off? And he can open up a space for a tough cut player at another position. So he's going to be a really interesting piece here. Like you said, there could be an injury aspect to this where they find a way to keep him without really having him on the 53 based on his injuries. So that could definitely happen. I'm going to lean towards him staying just because the veteran leadership aspect. And I think the fact that they, re-signed him after last year's, what he went through last year in terms of his health is definitely a sign that they still have plans for him and want him to be a part of this team. So I'm going to go with him, but he's definitely one of the most impactful bubble players when you're trying to make out one of these 53s.
I think he's a pup guy because I think his biggest value is his leadership. I've watched too much of, is it One Jets Drive? Is that it's one. And I think I watched the first episode though. And he's the guy leading the defensive line meeting, telling Michael Clemens to bring his Black Air Force energy and, leading that group. And so, he's clearly a guy a lot of guys respect. Like you said, he came back from last year. So I think they try to keep him in the building, but I think you can get that pup designation because of the hamstring. If they feel like he's going to be ready to go for week 1 and they still feel very high about him, it wouldn't surprise me if they keep him. But for now, I'll go with an A. But I could see Zuniga as well. It's a close. Defensive tackle, Quinnen, Rankins, Solomon Thomas, Jonathan Marshall, and Tanzel Smart. That's 5 for me. If you include JFM, that's 6. But 5 for me. The big notable cut here is Nathan Shepard, who, in my opinion, it seems like the staff really likes. He does give him a big, quote unquote, run stuffing defensive tackle, although he hasn't really done too much. I mean, you texted me at one point during the game, like, can you name one good Nathan Shepard play in his entire career?
It was just completely an unprompted text. I was just like, can you name one play he's made?
And the answer is no. The answer is absolutely no. He was an old rookie. And he hasn't made a play. He's a McCagnon guy, but clearly, I think he is probably a high character guy. Every time I've heard him talk, it's hard not to like him. So I could see him sticking around, but I mean, Quinnen, Rankins, and Thomas are the locks for me. Jonathan Marshall has had a nice camp. He could be that run stuffing guy. Joe Douglas pick. I think he sticks. And then Tanzel Smart's had a really nice couple preseason games. So, for me, I think those 5 stick. What are your 5 defense or what do your defensive tackles look like?
Yeah, so if you count JFM as an edge and not include him here, either way, I've Quinnen Williams, Sheldon Rankins, Solomon Thomas, and I do have Shepard making it, unfortunately. And that's it for my defensive tackles.
Oh, wow. No Jonathan Marshall. Okay.
No Marshall and no Smart. I know it's kind of bold, but I guess going this way kind of gives you more options and in a few other spots on the roster. Like I think Jackson is definitely an extra, I think, that I'm kind of putting on there. The 4th tight end and the quarterback is a big part of this too, because without Wilson's injury, they're keeping 2 quarterbacks. I think it's pretty clear they're going to do that. So there's going to be a player somewhere who that quarterback is going to affect, and this might be it. And again, this is my prediction. I don't agree with this. Nathan Shepard is not a good player. I don't think. You can't really name a single thing he's done in 4 years with this team or in this 5th year preseason. I know he used to be nicknamed, like Jets fans are calling him Canadian Thanos when he got drafted, but now he's more like the Thanos in Endgame at the beginning who gets his head chopped off. That's what he's more like, not the one in Infinity War.
Nice.
But I wouldn't agree with this. Go ahead.
Sorry. The one thing I would say here, and I have them keeping 5, and like you said, if they can't get the Mims trade done or they want to keep 6 or whatever, this is a spot where you could lose a guy. Partially because, JFM can play inside, and so can Michael Clemens. So that gives you some inside versatility. So do you need 5 defensive tackles?
Right.
That's where you maybe could let us Tanzel Smart or Jonathan Marshall go. But Tanzel Smart, I think if you let him go, gets claimed, in my opinion. He's made too many plays in this preseason for me not to think that. So I don't know. I really don't think Nathan Shepard sticks, but maybe I'm wrong. But I think for now, if they go 5 receivers, this makes sense to me. Linebacker.
I think well, just to wrap up on the defensive tackles, like I agree. If it were my preference, I would be keeping Tanzel Smart. He's been way too productive both last preseason and this preseason to be left off, and kind of in the same way as Streveler versus White. It's like, how do you value the actual performance in the preseason versus who have we invested more into, or who's in a higher standing on the depth chart? So it's a similar thing to that. So I'm going to lean towards the guy who the staff seems to like more, which there's credence to, because like you said earlier, the coaching staff gets to see these guys every day, see how they work, how they are in the meeting room, how they perform in the practice field. And that stuff matters. All we get to see is a few reps in preseason.
Right.
So there's credence to that. But at the same time, I think Nathan Shepard's really struggled throughout his career in most aspects, whereas Tanzel Smart, when we've gotten to see him in preseason, has been very good. And then Jonathan Marshall, I think he's going to be a tough cut, but it's other than the Falcons game, a couple of plays, and one of them he wasn't really blocked. Other than that, you just haven't seen much from him that matches up the athleticism score that he had. But I think you can get him on the practice squad.
That's what I was going to say.
I think he would make it.
I think he has a higher chance of making it to the practice squad than Smart does. So if you have to cut a defensive tackle, I would cut Jonathan Marshall and keep Smart, because I think Smart has had too damn good of a preseason not to get claimed. But, again, sometimes as fans, you overrate your own players. And, there's 31 other teams who are doing this in their head right now. They're like, oh, I really hope nobody else claims him. You know what I mean? So it's not a guarantee that a guy like that would get claimed, but I would stick with Smart over Marshall. But for now, I'll keep both. At linebacker, I have him keeping 4: Mosley, Williams, Quan, and Sherwood. Same for you?
Yeah, I had the same 4.
All right. I mean, that means the release of Hamza Nasruddin. He's a perfect example of one of the, when you have as many draft picks as the Jets have had the last few years, some of those young guys will get cut. I think he goes right to the practice squad unless somebody claims him. I like what he can do. I like the potential for him. He's made some plays, but clearly he's not there yet to stick as a 5th linebacker. But who knows? Maybe by the end of the season, if he develops in the practice squad, he could be, and maybe makes an impact on special teams. Speaking of special teams, there's a big cut on this one for me. I have Sauce, Reed, Carter, Hall, who are all locks. Eccles, Guidry, but no Justin Hardy, who, in my opinion, I think he's a really tough guy to keep, because for the Jets are, I think they're like $5 million under the cap or something like that after adding Dwayne Brown. They need cap space. If you cut Hardy, that gives you $2 million free right there. And that's just it's a hard ask to say you got to keep this guy, not free up the $2 million when he just plays special teams. He's a great gunner. Absolutely. But I think you can get that. I think you can replicate that production elsewhere. Maybe he takes a pay cut. I don't know, but the Jets are too deep and too cap strapped to keep a permanent special teamer, in my opinion. Especially one who's like not returning kicks. Like a permanent gunner is it's a luxury that I don't think the Jets have. And I think Eccles actually played solid today, and I think Guidry's their only backup nickel guy, and he's, it seems like the staff likes him as well. So those are the 6 I kept. Michael, what does your cornerback depth chart look like?
I have the same cornerback unit, and Hardy's right there with Curry as one of those 2 veteran guys who's a very key cut in terms of the domino effect that he creates. But I think, like you said, the cap relief you get from releasing him, I think is worth it versus what he brings. And he is a very good special teamer. That's for sure. But I think he was a little bit below last season, what you expected to be getting out of him. It's not to say he was bad, but I just think he was, pretty good versus you're paying him to be, for a guy who plays 0 defense, you're paying him to be an elite special teamer. And I don't think he was quite at that level. And this preseason, I don't think he's been at that level either. So I think it's a cut you can make. And it's also tough because he's definitely another leader on the team. But just looking at across this roster and, some of the players that you're thinking of letting go, it's kind of hard to stick with a pure special teams only guy who does have a decent cap number that you can get out of, who can't contribute to defense at all. So it's a tough one. I could see him making it, but I'm gonna go with this prediction. I have him off.
And I also think a guy like Isaiah Dunn, who will probably get cut, is a great candidate for the practice squad as well. Now, taking a look at safety, and this is an interesting position as well. The Jets let go of Elijah Riley this week, which, was a little surprising to me that they did it this early. I thought there was a guy they might try to stash in the practice squad. The Steelers claimed him. I don't know if he has enough time to stick on there, but I have him keeping 4. The Jets kept 3 last year, so maybe they'll only keep 3 this year, but I am keeping 4: Whitehead, Joyner, Pinnock, and Parks. I think Parks, to me, has very clearly outplayed Ashton Davis and has very clearly been the Jets' third best safety. I think he has to make it. Pinnock, a converted corner, I thought has been pretty good in limited action in the regular season. He's made some mistakes this year in preseason, but to me, I think he sticks on as a safety. So I have the Jets keeping 4. Michael, what about you?
Yeah, I also have 4 safeties: Whitehead, Joyner, Pinnock, and Parks.
Yeah, and that means maybe Ashton Davis sticks on the practice squad. Again, kind of like we were talking about with Mims, where it's like, hey, maybe there's a GM who really liked Ashton Davis who tries to bring him into the fold, but he clearly has not been impressive on tape. There was some rumblings about him in the draft process, potentially being a late first or an early second. Maybe those are overblown, but you never know. Maybe another team claims him. I think the Jets can probably sneak him onto the practice squad if they want. Tony Adams is another guy who I thought has made some plays in this preseason, so maybe he sticks on the practice squad. But yeah, that's 4 safeties right there. And then Zerline, Mann, and Hennessy round out the roster. So that's 53 for me. Ours look a little bit different. I may be thinking more with the heart. Michael's thinking with the brain. We'll see. It never exactly looks like how you think it will. There's always some surprising cuts. Before we get out of here, Michael, who's one surprising cut you think the Jets might have? One guy that you think you'd be like, what? Because it kind of seems like there's one of those every year, like a Tevin Coleman or somebody like that. Who is a guy you could see just maybe getting cut that we're not even talking about?
I guess I'm going to try to pick a good answer for this. I don't have one off the top of my head, and I guess that's the point of it, because if it were off the top of my head, it wouldn't be that surprising. So I'm scanning this right now.
I can stall for you. I can give you a few. I think.
Right. Go ahead, stall for me a little bit.
This is my gift right here. I'm great at this. All right. I think Tevin Coleman, as I mentioned, is a candidate. Zonovan Knight did make some plays. It seems like Coleman's pretty trusted by the staff, and also Coleman's had some big runs. So I don't think that happens. Maybe Jeff Smith is a guy who we kind of think is a lock because Calvin Jackson's made some plays. Although Jeff Smith brings you value in special teams, and especially if you cut Hardy, Smith might be your best gunner. So I don't know about that. On the offensive line, Doga wouldn't really be a big surprise. So nobody really there. Defensive line, maybe a Bryce Huff. Maybe he was playing pretty late into this game. I'm just trying to think of like a big surprise. I don't think Huff gets cut. We're just trying to think of some shockers here. We want shock value here. Here's one. Very unlikely, but Sheldon Rankins, maybe. I could see.
Okay. I was looking at him. I was thinking about it, but I haven't seen the evidence that it's on the table.
These are long shots. That's the point. We're trying to find potential guys that we could get.
Throw logic out the window. How about Eccles? How about that?
That's another one. That's a guy that.
There you go.
And I talked about Pinnock a little bit too. So between Pinnock and Eccles, maybe there's somebody there that gets cut. And and Eccles, maybe they cut Eccles and keep Isaiah Dunn, or they just keep 5 corners.
Maybe cut Zach Wilson, start Chris Streveler.
Yeah. Honestly, no, I'm just kidding. All right, well, I think that should do it for us. We will be back later this week breaking down the 53. We'll have what do you think? We'll have an initial reaction to the 53-man roster, something like that. I mean, there's always we have to let the dust settle. So that's 24 hours after Tuesday. That's when they can put guys in the practice squad and stuff. So maybe we'll have a pod Thursday or Friday, something like that. So we'll have a pod later in the week talking about the roster and see whatever moves they made, if they traded Mims or whatever happens. So we'll be talking about the fallout in the next episode later this week. We will be back pretty consistently on the Monday schedule, especially as we get into the season. Cannot believe it's almost here. Michael and I will be at the game together. Very excited for that. It's going to be the first time we've seen a game together. Hopefully it's good luck. Maybe together probably not likely, but maybe we get some good luck. You and I watching the game together. So couldn't be more excited for that.
Actually, there is a little bit of a precedent here. We did technically watch the draft together
That's
through Zoom,
true.
and then the draft was quite successful. I think most Jets fans would agree. So,
Yeah. All right.
pretty
Maybe
good
you're right.
start there.
Maybe you're right. All right. So maybe we get some Flacco magic. We have plenty of time to break that matchup down. We got 2 weeks before that happens. So very excited for that. As I said, we'll be back later in the week breaking down the fallout from the roster cuts. But overall, successful preseason. Robert Saleh undefeated in the preseason, has that one tie against the Eagles. But I count that as a win. That's a Hail Mary and a 2-point conversion. So 6, kind of 6 wins in my book for Robert Saleh in the preseason. So Joe Douglas really bringing that Ravens culture. Did the Jets go undefeated in 2019 in the preseason? Because they beat the Giants.
They had one loss.
Did they beat the Falcons?
I was at that game. They beat the Falcons.
And then they played
I know they
the
had
Giants
one loss. I forget who it was.
Okay.
Though.
Probably the Eagles. Did they play 3? No, there was 4 games back then. So who was
it was
the
4? All right,
Saints.
I pulled it up.
The Saints.
They lost to the Giants and the Saints. They were 2-2.
Oh, they lost that. Okay, well, never mind. That was Adam Gase years. I was just trying to see if Joe Douglas was undefeated. But
It
Robert
felt like
Saleh
a win
still.
because remember the first team offense had a really good drive.
That's what it was. Well, yeah. I mean, look, I think preseason. The things you can take away from preseason, like you said, are, you want to see this team have an identity. You can clearly see, some of these players really making real progress. You can see the weapons getting separation and the offensive. I mean, you could get like an image coming into focus about what this team will look like. But at the end of the day, 3-0 preseason doesn't mean anything. That goes to a 0-0 starting tomorrow. But pretty cool. The Jets have had 3 straight comeback victories. I think that does kind of speak to the character of the team a little bit. I think you could draw some conclusions out of that and some of the adjustments the coaching staff has been able to make. So there's, maybe we're reaching a little bit, but it's certainly a win is always better than a loss, even if it's preseason. So, if they had lost, you'd be like, it doesn't really matter. It's preseason. So you got to kind of keep that same attitude. But at the same time, a win's a win. So you can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter, myself at Ben W. Blessington, Michael at Michael_Nania. Go to jetsxtractor.com for the best place to go for Jets content. That'll do it for us. We'll be back later in the week. Go Jets.